next edition of our Grab and Go Growth Tactics webinar. It's good to have the three of us back. And my name is Jim Wilcox. I own the Sandler Performance Center in Fort Wayne and South Bend, Indiana. We serve all of the great state of Indiana, mainly the northern half of it. To my right in the picture is Mr. John Vanderslice. Let you introduce yourself there, John.
Okay, good. I guess we're in afternoon already. Wow. Good afternoon. So I am John Vanderslice, and I, much like Jim and Tim, I own a Sandler Performance Center here in the great state of New Jersey. I am in the southern half of the state, much closer to Philadelphia than Newark, by the way. Not if there's anything wrong with that, but just as a reference point. New Jersey references their people by their exit on the New Jersey Turnpike. So I'm at exit 4, if anybody knows New Jersey. So yeah, that's me. And the fellow to, I guess, to my right is Tim Barry. Tim, who are you? What are you doing? Who do you do it to?
That's a great question. It's a few different answers depending on, never mind. I'm Tim Barry. I own the Sandler Performance Center in Fort Worth in the Republic of Texas, and happy to be here as always. So off we go.
All right. Well, today's topic is hiring best practices. And as John and Tim and I were discussing this one, there's probably 5 or 6 sessions here. But Tim, do you want to take us through today's session? As always,
Sure.
The goal is to give some tactics that you can use today. So lead us away, Mr. Tim Barry.
Right on. Thank you. So, hiring best practices is a hot topic right now. Right now, we've got, we peaked out at somewhere around 30 million newly unemployed folks. We went from 3% unemployment, which was a 50-year low, to having a Great Depression, an unemployment rate that exceeded that of the Great Depression. And we ended up with 30 million people that were horrifically thrown out of jobs due to this COVID-19 business. So thankfully now we've seen some retraction in that, but we're getting a ton of questions from our clients about what are hiring best practices, because at the end of the day, there's a million, 20 million resumes still out there. And so, as always, 2 things. Want to encourage you to get your chat fingers warmed up, and when you're looking at the chat box, make sure that you're opening up your comments to the panelists and all attendees, so we can see what your 2 cents are. We need and look forward to your participation. So I'm going to let Jim read off and man the chat box while we're going through here. But the real question is what is your strategy for hiring top performers? What is your strategy for hiring top performers? Not just anybody, not just a warm butt in a seat to fill a need, for top performers. What's that look like?
So the first response, Tim, is look for passion as my number 1. So finding passion, and I would say that's a good one for any role, right? So any type of role that you're in, could be manufacturing, could be sales, could be operations, accounting, etc. Passion for what you do. And Peter contributed that. I like that. So type in the chat box, what is your strategy for hiring top performers? What's your go-to? And I know we're going to talk about it, but one of the things that, is always top of mind for me is just keeping my radar on, right? And understanding who's out there and who's available. How about you, Johnny?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're in the process of hiring for a couple of our clients right now. And it's interesting. So yeah, I agree. And, when we talk about, looking for passion, right, it's hire for will, train for skill. I would, I think, for me, when we hired in the corporate world, it was always looking for people that were willing We could train for able, given that they had a base, skill set. But I think it is looking for, attitude. One of my really good clients in the transportation space, they have a very simple thing. They said they hire for hungry, humble, and smart. And I think that's kind of cool when you think about it. Hungry, humble, and smart. So I think it's always having your eyes open and being aware and looking for, that desire, because it's tough to teach. I can teach people how to deliver a service or a product or how to sell, but it's really tough to impact somebody's internal desire.
John, I think that's a really, really interesting and really important piece. You just can't teach desire. You can't teach the willingness piece. The able part that's the easy part. That's what we do. It's but if you don't have the will, to be a top performer in your role, then that's a game changer and a game breaker for me and my clients as well.
So Tim, we don't have a lot of comments in chat, and I suspect it's because of Linda's comment, which is, if I had a strategy, I wouldn't be on this webinar.
Well, here's the good news, and Linda, I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing with the rest of us. And here's a couple things. We're going to give you 4 pretty solid tactics right off the bat. But really, as we get started, what I want to really discuss is have you really considered what the cost of a bad hire is? Now, here's the good and the bad news. The bad news is that we get fooled if we're just going on our gut. The good news is that we've got some tactics we'll share with you today. But the reality is that everybody's going to present the best version of themselves in an interview. Nobody's going to come into an interview and be like, look, I'm gonna indulge in training and I'm gonna charm the snots out of the team. But in the end, really about 6 months from now, once the bumpers come off of the training, you know what? I'm not really gonna put that much effort into it because I'm comfortable where I'm at and this, that, and whatever. Nobody's actually gonna say that. And so the reality is that we have to think about what's the real actual cost of a bad hire. It's not just the salary. What we know is that the University of Stanford University came up with an idea, and they took salary and they figured in the benefits, the training resources, and the opportunity costs, and even there are some other things that they put together. And what Stanford actually discovered was the cost of a bad hire is about 5 times the sum of what you see on the screen right here. And so, for example, if you're hiring someone that costs $50,000 in benefits, salary, training opportunities, an opportunity cost, the actual cost of that bad hire is literally it's $250,000, $250,000. John, you've done a lot of acquisitions and turnarounds and stuff like that. What have you seen in the marketplace?
Well, it's funny. It resonates with me because we hired a lot of people because a lot of times the organizations were broken, and there were, people that, self-selected out, and others that, we had to help find the opportunities elsewhere. But the mistake that I made many times, I don't know if anybody in this call has done this, but I hired based on my gut, people that I thought were like me. I remember one time I hired a young guy at the gas station because, he was moving fast. He always looked neat. He was cleaning the windshield. Yes, sir. No, sir. I thought, wow, this guy's underemployed, just like me when I was a young guy, and I hired him, and he just didn't work out because it didn't mean that he had the skill set that I was looking for. So for me, I tried to take the variability out of it because we tend to hire on our own image, and I've made mistakes, and it's been very costly. So I always use benchmarking assessments. Now, in our case in Sandler here, we use a divine inventory and we use a extended disc profile. To me, the metaphor I would use, and I know Jim's a car guy, you would never buy a car without looking under the hood. And I've been doing this a long time, but there's things I cannot see with my eyes. And I've been fooled. Hey, that great looking car, I get all excited about it or something. Then you look under the hood and you say, boy, it's kind of, not in good shape, So I think, having too subjective of a process with no objective measure against it cost me a lot of money. And that was a mistake. I'll never do it again. Very quickly, I had a client very recently, about 6 months ago, hired somebody who was very excited, didn't assess him, said, hey, listen, I'm telling you, I'm sitting across Tom Cruise here. This guy's awesome. This guy's going to be a killer. He's doing great. Called me about 6 months later. He said, remember the guy I said was Tom Cruise? I made a mistake. I actually had Rodney Dangerfield. And he said, I should have listened to you and done the assessment. So I think you got to take the subjectivity out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's the beginnings of, here's hiring best practice number 1. What you see here is you see a precision watch. There's a lot of moving pieces in this. And the reason why I used this particular graphic is because hiring is a very precise, important piece of the culture that you're building. You've got to always be recruiting. ABR stands for always be recruiting, and the mindset is that you're looking to take the top. You want maximum productivity and you want maximum results, and you also want a cultural fit, and you can't do that if you just have somebody quit one day and you have to start from zero in order to find that unicorn, find that replacement. And so the mindset of always be recruiting is how you build your people funnel, you build that people bank up. And so not at any given point, you're not starting at 0 miles an hour. You're already running, and you've got a people bank to select from to get moving. Jim, you got any comments on this mentality?
Yeah, I think that from clients that I have and companies that I observe throughout, the areas that we serve here, there's some best practices in that where owners of these highly successful organizations will take the time, and top management of these organizations will take the time to meet with people they view as top talent that might be in the marketplace, or top talent that might be a future fit within the organization. And so very selectively, they'll sit down with people. And I find myself doing that. I don't know if you and John do it, but I will sit down with people who either A, say they're looking, or B, if I meet somebody who's extraordinary, I'll sit down and, have a cup of coffee or a lunch with them just to understand where they're at. Not necessarily that I'm looking to recruit them away because, we're a small organization with a handful of people, but if they're going to move and I can make the connection, great. If they're going to move and I have an opportunity, even better. What I don't want to do, and you alluded to this, is I don't want to hire because I have to, right? When we're in that panic because we have to hire somebody, that's where things get dicey and risky.
Yeah, great thoughts. I mean, this is, again, just putting a warm butt in a seat in order to fill a need. Maybe they have a 30 or maybe a 50% match for what you're really looking for, really affects your top and your bottom line. It's where recruiters and where organizations make their biggest mistakes. So best practice number 2, and you really need to, I want to challenge everybody. You got to ask yourself, how do you find your unicorns? We call unicorns those top performers. They're the people that come in and they're locked and loaded. They're working for results. They push and deliver results. They've got the right attitude. They're your top performers. They're your horses in the race. And the way we deal with this is we search for them. If you're looking for a unicorn, then you've got to search for them. And search means something very specific. First of all, we're looking for people with specific skills. And the more clear we are with identifying what skills that the candidate, the ideal candidate is going to have, the better off we're going to be, because we're going to be able to really, we're going to physically be able to lock and load, and we can be very very specific in what we're looking for. The second piece in search, and mind you, all these actually spell out search, is experience. We're looking for, the more specific we can be with the types of experience, work, and life skills that your ideal candidate profile looks like, is going to help you make sure that you're hunting unicorns as opposed to just settling. Jim, what's the work experience that you have in this end, skills and experience? Can you expound out on that a little bit?
So I want to make sure I understand. So what am I looking for from an experience perspective?
Yes, yeah, because a lot of times what I hear is people are like, look, I want you to only find people that have my industry experience specifically, and I make widgets, in Iowa. And so what's that experience you've got?
It's interesting because I actually have a client, we had this discussion last week where, they're in the insurance industry, and one of the senior vice presidents said, when I'm hiring, I want somebody with no insurance experience. I want somebody who has pure sales experience. I can teach them insurance. What I cannot teach them is to pick up a phone. And that goes back to, an earlier point in this conversation. So from an experience perspective, that client looks for outside industry experience. If I'm hiring within my industry, a sales associate, for example, I want to know that they've had specific hunting experience. My preference is that they've had experience in a high commission-based position. And that's different than an account manager who might be a salaried only type of position. So those are two different experience sets and skill sets. So those are a couple things that I look for. How about you, John? Anything specific on that?
No, I don't disagree. I think, I think the most important thing is to have people that are, again, can identify with your company vision, mission, values. The skill part, sometimes it's nice to have experience. Some of my best hires in the corporate world have been people that didn't have specific experience. I think the ability to think on your feet, good cognitive skills, are really, really important.
No, I love that. I love it. My results that the best hires that I've made both personally and with my clients have been, they had the right skills, they had the will to do things. The experience was less important because you can train to the product or the service. What you can't train is what Jim just alluded to is, he's looking for natural born hunters. He's looking for the people that go out there and can get it done. Now, industry experience, if you're executing the hunting behaviors, you can train to the concepts, but you can't train the actual drive and motor and ambition to go out and hunt every day. The third piece of search is attitudes, and you're looking for specific attitudes. It could mean cultural fits, and you got to be careful from an HR point of view to get involved with dealing with political and all that other stuff. That's not what we're talking about. But overall attitudes. What's your attitude towards the execution for results? What I know for sure is none of my clients want somebody that is kind of blasé and they've got a laissez-faire attitude towards the execution for results. If they're just kind of like, well, we're gonna sort of kind of try, And, we'll do our best and not worry about focus on results. They don't want that. Cognitive skills. And we'll get into that in the next slide, but does this person have, and have you been specific enough to identify what cognitive skills that these people, that your ideal candidate profile is going to have? For example, if you're hiring for an accountant, they better know how to count. They better know the basic rules of accounting. They better understand tax law, cost accounting, whatever it is. They've got to have those cognitive skills, and you've got to be able to capture those in part of your search. And maybe the last and the most underrated part of search is habits. Here's what we know as Sandler folks, and I know not everybody here is Sandler, but I think habits is huge, because what you do as a habit oftentimes translates into your professional world. I know that when people develop habits, they get into routines. There's a discipline involved with building and creating habits. And so find out and identify which ones are important to the role that you're hiring for. Jim, you got any thoughts on these attitudes, results, cognitive skills, and habits?
Yeah, from a habit perspective, I'm doing some phone screening for a client right now and a sales candidate that they're searching for. And one of the questions that I'm asking on the phone screen is, talk to me about your habits around professional development. And that is a question that, believe it or not, has stumped several candidates. And because they look for professional development to be given to them versus going out and getting it and seeking to find it. So they want that given to them, and depending on the position you're looking for, that may or may not be desirable.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Hiring best practice number 3, and I think this is an important piece right here, is build your interview strategy and questions and do it organizationally. I think we see it too many times where there's not an interview strategy. Interviewers wing it. And the problem with winging it is that there's wild inconsistencies in the kinds of questions that you're going to be given to different candidates. And Jim, you said this right in the beginning. We tend to want to hire people that are like us, that are similar to us. And so we'll make one of those 7 deadly hiring sins is we fall in love with somebody because they're just like us and whatnot. And therefore it opens us up to the danger of making that bad hire that costs us so dearly. John, what are some of the things that you and your clients are doing in terms of having an interview strategy? Is there a piece that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat the drum on assessments, but I will tell you this, one of the most valuable tools, and I said we've probably, I don't know how many people we've screened in the last month, but in the assessment tool, the thing that I really appreciate about it is if you don't have any objective criteria, you don't know what questions to ask, and you end up asking dumb questions like, "Hey Tim, do you mind telling me what do you think is your greatest strength?" And then the amazingly intuitive follow-up question, "So what do you think is your greatest weakness, Tim?" I mean, or God forbid, "Sell me this pen," and then I would knock somebody unconscious for doing that. In the assessment, it will actually pinpoint the areas that potentially can be a weak spot. And it will frame the questions for you so that you don't spend time asking questions about things that are already a given, that are not a weak spot, they're a strength, and it allows you to focus very succinctly on the areas that could potentially be a game changer or a non-starter for you. So again, I think, it gives you that objective measure and focuses on the things that are potentially speed bumps and not focusing on overall, typical interview questions.
Yeah, I think, John, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the other part is that write your interview questions out ahead of time. And what we know is that the top performing uh, employers, the top performing companies that we deal with, they've got specific questions that they'll ask, and it's dependent on role. If you're going to have a bank teller versus a CFO, there will be different questions. But what they do to a T is they all use the same interview questions throughout their organization. So if there's going to be 4 interviews with individuals within the leadership organization of these top performing clients, they're all asking the same questions. And the interesting part is they take notes individually. They don't do group interviews. They do one-on-ones. And then afterwards, when they're reviewing the various candidates together as a leadership team, they're taking their answers to the exact same interview questions, and they're comparing the answers in the way that the candidate shared it with each of those leaders. Now, you get much better information at that point when you do that, as opposed to letting the entire organization interview on the fly. And so again, if you don't have an interviewing strategy, if you don't have your questions, written out and agreed upon, and if you're not using a single strategy like that, where everybody's asking the same questions, you may be putting yourself at risk for a bad hire.
Yeah, and just to be clear there, I think those questions you're speaking of, Tim, are things that may be around specifics important to your organization or your culture. And you do want to be consistent with those, but then there are going to be questions that are specific to that individual that you want to uncover pre-hire. It's like qualify hard, close easy. You want to qualify hard when you're interviewing.
Great point. Great point. So as you're building those strategy, the interview strategy and questions, you should be asking situational questions. Don't, John, you gave 2 great examples. What are your greatest strengths? It's a terrible question. Give them a situational question that puts them in a scenario, and let them work their way out. See if they have a process for what you're asking about, and if they can do the mental gymnastics and communicate it. Give specific examples. Make sure you're getting specific examples and not general platitudes. Identify and verify the candidate role. A lot of times we know that people will embellish in their resume and overstate their role that they had in a particular big win. So identify that. Make sure that they weren't just part of the team, like the lowest part of the team, and make sure they were leading it if that's what they're saying. And then go back to use the same template throughout the organization. So now we spent a couple times, John, you in particular are impassioned about, best practice number 4, and that's getting the X-ray and leveraging behavioral assessments. And as we close out, because we're coming up on a minute here, Jim, do you have any additional wisdom you can share with us on this side?
Other than what's already been stated, I mean, getting a combination of subjective and objective criteria that help us best evaluate the candidate is key here. Just going off our gut, like John said, is likely short-sighted. And if I only use, so I caution clients on this too, if I'm only using, assessments to make blanket decisions, that could be potentially a blind spot as well. So we've got to use the right combination of both. And it's always good to have somebody who has expertise in these. Obviously, the 3 of us do this all day, every day. But seek somebody out who can help you either in the organization or externally in getting that X-ray of the candidate.
Great stuff. So we're at our 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Central bump out. And so before you leave, please warm up your chat fingers. Post in the chat what your aha moment was, what your takeaway is. Moving forward, if you've got any questions, like Jim said, Jim, John, and I have an unbelievable amount of experience with hunting unicorns and helping our clients recruit top performers. If you've got any questions, reach out to one of us. And thank you very much for participating in today's Grab and Grow Growth Tactics webinar.
Good
Please
job.
make sure
So
you
Leo
pop
says,
something
only
in.
be recruiting. It's a must. Awesome. Stop trusting the gut. ABR. Yeah.
Stop trusting the gut. That's a
The
monster.
process, right?
Good stuff. Keep typing those in. We'd love to get your feedback on what you got out of this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for attending.
Nice job, guys. Good work, as always.